In the year 1998, on the Lower East Side bar in New York City, where our protagonist Hank works as a bartender. After his shift that night, Hank's girlfriend Yvonne comes to pick him up from work so they can go do the naughty. Upon arriving at their apartment, they bump into one of Hank's neighbor known as Russ. Russ says that his dad is sick, so he wants to fly to London to look after him and wants Hank to take care of his cat known as Buddy while he's gone. Hank says he can't take care of animals, but Yvonne persuades him to just take the cat. As they argue, one of their neighbor, Dwayne, comes out of his apartment to tell them that it's late at night and he needs to rest and begs them to keep it down. Russ gets really angry and keeps yelling at the neighbor and pretends he's trying to approach the guy and immediately leaves the building. Left with no choice, Hank allows the cat to come inside his apartment. Yvonne suddenly pulls out a gun and points at Hank, who raises his hands in compliance. Turns out it's just a cigarette lighter and they're just playing before finally getting down to do the naughty while the cat watches. The next morning, Hank wakes up tired from last night and grabs a beer to drink. Yvonne sees this and asks if he's fine while touching his injured knee, and Hank says he's alright. When Yvonne leaves the house, Hank stays back to make breakfast when the cat suddenly shows up hungry, so he goes to get the cat food from Russ's apartment. As soon as he gets to the door and tries to open it, two menacing men shows up behind him to ask if Russ is around. Hank says no, so they try to get into Russ's apartment, but Hank blocks their way. Running out of patience, they immediately start to beat him up, taking turns to inflict pain on him. With all the noises, the neighbor comes out to warn the thugs to stop or he'd call the police. When they hear this, they go after the neighbor, but the neighbor quickly closes his door, so they leave Hank for now, promising Hank that they'd return. Minutes later, Hank passes out from the severe injuries he sustained. A throwback shows Hank and his best friend riding back home while talking about their big baseball game. They're drinking and driving, so when Hank comes across a cow on the road, he quickly swerves but loses control of the vehicle and he crashes. Hank wakes up in the present day with his girlfriend standing next to his bed. He sees the patch on his belly and asks Yvonne how long he's been out, and she says it's 2 days. He quickly borrowed her phone to call his worried mom and lies to her that he had a food poisoning so she doesn't worry too much. Turns out they did a surgery on him where they removed one of his kidney because it was damaged during the attack. Also, he's worried that the more he stays at the hospital the bigger his bill, so with the help of his girlfriend they head back home. On their way, Yvonne reads out a list of what he can and cannot do because of his surgery, which includes no alcohol. Hank doesn't like the idea of not drinking but promises to stay away from drinking for the sake of his health. At home, Yvonne complains about Hank not taking anything serious, including their relationship, and wants him to man up and prove that he's capable of taking his life serious, and leaves, telling Hank to call her whenever he's serious about their relationship. Hank adheres to what she says and starts emptying all the alcohol bottle in the toilet. While cleaning out the bottles, the cat pushes one of the bottles from the shelves and the fluid pours on the bed, so Hank has to take out the bedsheet to go wash it at a laundry shop across the street. After he's done, Hank returns to his apartment building where he finds the Russian guy from a few days ago. When he enters, he hears some noise coming from two guys trying to break into Russ' apartment, and he quickly hides his face before going to the top floor and trying to use the stairs at the backyard to get to his apartment. When Hank tries to get in through his own window but it's locked, at that moment he hears some noise coming from Russ's room, so he leans forward to check what's going on and Microbe spots him. Hank quickly moves away into the other window of his apartment to avoid getting caught and manages to open it to get inside before Microbe could catch him. Later in the evening, Hank calls Detective Roman to report the assault and breaking in. The detective asks Hank to describe the men that he saw, and he starts by saying they're Ukrainians because they had an accent and they have a turf right around the corner. The detective corrects him by saying that they are not Ukrainians, explaining that the Russian Mafia took over the neighborhood years ago. Looking through his apartment, the detective learns that Hank used to play baseball during his high school and asks Hank if he knows about Russ's criminal activities. Hank says he doesn't know anything about that, and the detective explains that Russ is a drug dealer she's been trying to arrest for years. Roman then brings out a photo of two Jewish men and asks if he's seen them around. Hank says no, and she tells him that these men are monsters. Whenever he sees them around he should call her. After the meeting, Hank goes to take out the cat dump and finds a huge one, but upon closer look, he learns that it's just a poop toy, and when he checks the back he finds a key hidden inside it and tries to call the detective, but her number isn't connecting. At that moment, Hank hears some noise coming from the other apartment and looks through his peephole where he finds the two Jewish guys the detective mentioned earlier breaking into Russ's apartment. That night, Hank goes to the bar where he works to ask his boss Paul for a favor, but ends up drinking after he persuades him to take a couple of shots because his baseball team won one of their games. After so many drinks, Hank is now drunk until he's ignored by everyone, and his girlfriend Yvonne comes to the bar to take him home. Hank starts to rant about how he had so much and now he's lost so much that all he has is garbage. Yvonne hears this and thinks Hank is referring to her as garbage and leaves him alone. Hank manages to reach his apartment and pukes on his way, so he takes out all his clothes outside, leaving himself with only his underwear. Hank gets into his apartment and tries to play with his baseball bat and ends up falling and passing out. A throwback continues to show Hank's aftermath accident where his best friend's lifeless body lays in the car's bonnet while he drags himself out of the car with fractured leg, which has rendered him useless from playing baseball professionally. Hank wakes up with a Russian thug standing right in front of him. Hank looks around for the cat and finds him hiding. He asks what happened to him, and the other guy known as Microbe says he tried to pet him and he bit him, so he kicked the cat. A new guy has come with him this time and his name is Colorado. He tells Microbe to step aside so he can talk to Hank and get some answers. For a moment everything seems to be calm when Hank mentions that he found a key, but things quickly turns dark when he says doesn't remember where he left it. They start to beat and torture him while clipping out his injury, only stopping when they hear a knock from one of the neighbors complaining about the noise. After sending the neighbor away, Colorado says they should leave before the neighbor calls the police, but before leaving, Colorado warns Hank not to call anyone, including the detective, or he'll kill everyone he cares about, before giving him a paper with his number to call him when he's with the key. Following this, Hank goes to meet his girlfriend at her house with the cat and begs her to look after him. Seeing his bleeding nose, Yvonne brings out her tampon to stop the bleeding and begs her to help stitch him because going to the hospital would mean getting the attention of the police, which he doesn't want. Yvonne tries to get him to talk about what's going on, but Hank dodges the question and says he'll be fine, but tells her he can't remember what happened last night, so Yvonne tells him what Paul said to her when she went to meet him. Hank immediately recalls what happened and tries to leave, but Yvonne asks if he can handle it and thinks that they should call the cops, but Hank assures her that everything would be fine before leaving. Seeing the dead body of his girlfriend, Hank runs to meet with Detective Roman. Roman points out that his girlfriend was shot from the side of her head, and that the killer must have been searching her apartment when she entered, telling Hank to reveal what he knows so she can help him out before they kill another person he loves. Hank remains silent, still in grief over how he lost his best friend to an accident that he caused during his high school years, and now his girlfriend is dead due to his own fault. Finally ready to talk, the detective takes Hank to her favorite restaurant and starts to explain that the Russians who beat him up work for a notorious mob business owner known as Igor Dolokhov. While Colorado runs a nightclub in Igor's turf, Hank thinks he was the one that killed Yvonne. The detective makes it clear that Colorado can talk a lot but isn't the type that can pull the trigger, so he isn't the one that killed Yvonne. Further into the story, the detective points out that the people who could have killed Yvonne would be the Jewish brothers, Lipa and Shmuley. Roman says that the Hebrew brothers saw the Russians with him and started following him. When they didn't find him, they killed his girlfriend to send a message to him not to mess with them. In conclusion, all this has happened just because of a huge amount of money that the key he possesses opens, which Russ obviously stole. Hank blames himself for the death of his girlfriend, saying he should have listened to her when she asked him to call the police initially. Roman tells him not to worry, she's called a crew that would come pick him up so he can take them to where he kept the key. Minutes later, Hank is shocked to see the Russians with Colorado entering the restaurant. Roman then reveals that she's a corrupt cop who's been working with the thugs in New York City, and she also wants a share of the money. Hank then takes them to the bar where he works and asks his boss to give him the key he gave to him the other day. The boss laughs at him while asking what key he's talking about. Hank tells him he's serious and needs the key right away, but the boss insists that he didn't give him any key. Running out of patience, Roman and the other guys enter the bar and threaten Paul that if he doesn't give them the key, she'll be forced to search the place. Things quickly escalate when Colorado shoots the other guy in the bar for blocking their way. Colorado then points the gun at Paul and tells him he's going to count to 5, and if he doesn't bring out the key, he's going to kill him. Seeing that Colorado is serious about his threat, Roman brings out her gun and shoots Colorado in the head. She takes the gun and puts it in the other guy's hand to make it look like they shot themselves. Scared of losing his own life too, Paul says he kept the key in a safe. Paul calls out the safe code for Roman, who tries it multiple times but it doesn't work. Paul then goes down and pretends he's bringing out the key, only to bring out a gun and start spraying at Roman and her thugs, eventually missing all his shots. Hank quickly runs to avoid getting hit, and when the old man opens the door, he's shot dead by Roman and the Russians. Roman tries to convince Hank to come out so they can look for the key together, but Hank refuses, and she leaves because the police would soon be there. After confirming they've left, Hank leaves the bar too. He walks several miles, thinking of where he might have left the key. When he gets to the front of his apartment building, he recalls puking in front of the door and taking off his clothes because of the smell. He checks the waste bin but doesn't find the clothes. He quickly turns to the hobo who's sleeping around the corner and sees him wearing the same pants he wore that day, and begs him if he's seen a key. Fortunately for Hank, the hobo brings out the key and gives it to him. Hank is overjoyed by this. Later, Hank returns to find his apartment trashed. He hears a knock on his door and quickly grabs his baseball bat to check who it is, and when the door opens, he smashes on the person, only to find out that it's Russ. Hank then shows him the key and asks where he kept the money. Russ tries to play dumb and Hank tells him that they killed Yvonne for it. Feeling bad about the situation, Russ takes Hank to his car and asks him to drive, but he refuses and tells Russ to drive instead. On their way, Russ starts to explain what really happened. During his younger days, when he met the two Hebrew brothers, Lipa and Shmuley, he started working with them to push drugs, which he sells in Colorado's club, but for years now he has stopped working with them. Recently, they came with a new drug which he was helping them to sell, but then he got arrested by Roman, who demanded that he give her a tip about their operation for his freedom. It turns out the detective owes the Russian mob. Being the corrupt cop that she is, Roman decided that they could sell the drug at Colorado's bar so that everyone gets a cut of the profit made from the drugs. Since they don't trust themselves, they needed a third party to handle the money, so when they want to split it, they'd do it equally, which is where they called Russ to handle the cash. Turns out that on the day he was supposed to hand out the money to each group, he got a call from the hospital that his dad had a stroke, so he had to leave on that same day, only to reach the hospital and find his father already dead. After opening the stash house, Hank is shocked to see the bags of cash and asks Russ how much it is. Russ says a little over $4 million, and Hank quickly borrows his phone to call his mom. During the call, Russ points a gun at Hank, saying he's dead since they all think he ran away with the money. Even if he shows up with it, they'd still kill him, so he wants to take the money and go somewhere where they won't find him. Hank asks what happens to him, and Russ apologizes, saying he's the fall guy. Hearing this, Hank tosses the phone to Russ and uses the distraction to push him back into the room, hitting his head on a furniture, and he passes out. Hank then calls Roman to tell her that he has the money, and she tells him to bring it to her, and to also come along with a fall guy unless he wants to do 20 to life in prison for everything that has happened so far. So, they set up a meeting place, and Hank tells Roman to come along with the cat. When they get to the location, Russ starts to panic when he sees Roman because he knows that she would kill both of them, so he runs out of the car. Hank catches up to him and holds him hostage. Roman then asks where the money is, and Hank says he brought the key and Russ would take her to the money. During the struggle, Russ manages to break free from Hank and attacks Microbe, who has a gun. As they start to fight over the weapon, it goes off and ends up killing Alexei. The cat manages to escape from Roman and goes to Hank. As they escape in a car, Russ tells Hank that he thinks it was Roman who killed Yvonne because Roman shot Colorado in that same way. Hank doesn't believe that there's any reason for Roman to kill Yvonne, and Russ explains that maybe she came looking for the key and ended up bumping into Yvonne and killing her. After escaping from Roman, the duo makes it to the train station and quickly enters before the others could get to them. During the ride, Russ tells Hank to take care of the cat before dying due to the head injury. At the next stop, Hank gets off the train while Russ's body just sits there. The next passenger even pushes the body away, not realizing he's dead. The next day, Hank gets a call from Roman. She threatens that she knows his mom's address, reminding him that everyone that's close to him so far has ended up dead. If he doesn't want the same to happen to his mom, he needs to bring the money to her, and she would find a way to help him. Following this, Hank gets to a phone booth to call his mom and beg her to leave the house. He blames himself for the death of his friends and doesn't want the same to happen, promising he'd call her when everything is over. Hank then sits in a corner and tries to rewrap the cat's bandage. That's when he gets an idea. He takes out the keycap and calls the Hebrew brothers, promising to take them to where the money is. Later, the Hebrew brothers come to pick him up and they ask what happened to Russ. Hank tells them he killed him with a baseball bat. They then ask for the key, and Hank says Roman has it, but he's the one who knows where the money is. He's supposed to meet her in an hour. He strikes up a deal and tells the Hebrews that he'll tell them where the money is after they kill Roman. They start speaking in their language and agree to do what he says since he knows where the money is. Besides, Roman has been a pain in the rear for them, so they don't mind killing her. But before going to meet Roman, they stop at their mom's place for a quick meal. The brothers introduce Hank to their mother as a half-Hebrew, so she welcomes him. The brothers then takes Hank to another room where they strip but don't find any key. Afterwards, the mom gives them her blessings and tells them to be careful. When they get to the meeting point, Hank wants to join them to make sure Roman is dead, but they tie him to the steering and tell him to wait in the car while they go deal with Roman. As he waits, the Hebrews make their way into the club by killing anyone who stands in their way. Outside, Hank sees Roman running out of the club. Seeing that she's about to escape, he pulls out a hot pin from the car and cuts himself loose to go after her. Unfortunately, he's cornered by Microbe, who's happy to drop his gun for a fist fight. As he gets ready and charges towards Hank, he's taken out with just 2 punches. As he goes after Roman, a gun is pointed at his head, and Roman demands for the key. Hank says he doesn't have it since he threw it in the ocean and quickly knocks the gun out of her hand. Roman puts up a good fight and manages to take on Hank, but he quickly grabs a broken wood and stabs Roman in the foot. He then grabs her gun and points it at her. Roman says he doesn't have the mind to kill someone, so he drops the gun and allows the Hebrews to finish the job. They ask him to get the key from the body, and Hank says she doesn't have it. He goes to the car and unwraps the cat's bandage to reveal that he hid the key there. As they're about to drive to the location, they ask Hank to drive since today is Shabbos and they aren't allowed to drive. At first, Hank refuses to drive because of his experience, but after much persuasion, he gets on the driver's seat and tells them to use their seat belts. During the ride, the brothers tell him that at this point, they could kill him, but for some reason, they choose not to, so they might as well give him $200,000 for the troubles and let him go. While they talk, Hank notices one of the Hebrew brothers holding Yvonne's lighter and realizes they were the ones that killed his girlfriend. He pretends to be cool so the one at the back won't kill him. He starts to drive like crazy while speeding. The brothers beg him to stop, but he doesn't listen. When he sees a pole, Hank quickly grabs the cat to protect it and rams the car into the pole. One of the brothers dies instantly, while the other confesses that they shouldn't have allowed him to drive before dying too. Hank sustains minor injuries, and thankfully, the cat is fine as well. The next day, Hank is all dressed up looking like Russ with a fake passport to leave New York. His looks and attitude manage to convince the hostess, and she stamps his passport for passage. Once he gets to the island, Hank calls his mom to tell her that everything's safe now and she can return to the house. He's sent half of what he has in this world, promising that he's fine and wants her to live her best life.